I remember the days when my mind felt like a storm, endless clouds of worry and doubt swirling constantly. No matter how many bills I paid or how much I earned, there was this persistent feeling gnawing at me. That tragedy, that financial disaster was just around the corner. It was as if I was waiting for the other shoe to drop every single day. Even when everything seemed to be going well, deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. I would envision scenarios of sudden deaths, broken plans, maybe even losing everything that I had worked so hard for. That constant anticipation of loss became almost a part of me, an automatic reflex I didn't even realize I was living by. It's strange, isn't it? To be so consumed by fear that you start creating it. It's like my mind had this eerie ability to create a future based purely on the worries I held in my heart. Every time I hit a little bit of stability, a moment of peace, I would find myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, as if the universe was just waiting for me to let my guard down so it could strike. I didn't see it at the time, but that kind of thinking was actually pushing me further away from the abundance I kept desperately trying to attract. Every thought about lack, about losing what I had, was sending out a signal, a magnet, that drew exactly that into my life. But here's what's strange. I started to notice something wasn't quite right. I kept repeating these patterns, yet I clung to hope that someday things would change. I kept telling myself, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, I'll finally find a way to escape this cycle. Yet, no matter how much I wished for better, I was unknowingly doing the very thing that kept wealth and security just out of reach. It's like I was shooting myself in the foot every time I allowed my fears to take control. I wasn't fully aware of how badly I was sabotaging myself until one day, I really paused and looked at what my mind was doing. Because deep down, I knew that most of my suffering was rooted in one thing, the fear of losing what I had, even as I tried to hold on to it tighter and tighter. It's as if I believed that perfect financial stability was a fragile thing, something to be guarded and feared, rather than something to be cultivated with gratitude and faith. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios, rehearsing them in my mind like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. I would wake up feeling anxious, even before starting the day, already bracing for the inevitable disaster I thought was destined to happen. On some level, I had become convinced that my worries were protecting me, that somehow, if I prepared for the worst, I could avoid it. But instead, I was building the very circumstances I feared. And yet, I couldn't help but wonder, what if I could change that? What if I could break free from this cycle of anticipation? What if the key wasn't in trying to control the outcome, but in shifting the way I thought about it altogether? I realized that my fears, no matter how intense or justified they seemed, were only reflections of something deeper, something within me. I started to see how my thoughts weren't just mental clutter. They were actual forces shaping my reality. I would literally wake up and find that my anxiety had created another obstacle before I even got out of bed. It felt like I was caught in a trap I had set for myself, and somehow, I was also the one holding the key to unlocking it. That's when I began to understand that fear of losing money, of losing control, was a manifestation I was creating without even realizing it. That if I wanted something different, I had to learn how to change my inner dialogue, my focus, my energy. But I knew this wasn't going to be easy, because when fear is so deeply ingrained, it's like a root that's been growing inside for years. It's comfortable in its familiarity, even if it's tearing everything apart. Still, I couldn't ignore the truth that caught my attention one day. The power to transform my reality was always mine. I just hadn't learned how to wield it consciously yet. So now, as I stand here reflecting on all of this, I realize the journey isn't about waiting for the outside world to change. It's about what's happening inside, how I choose to think, feel, and believe. Because if my mind is the cause, then my thoughts are the seeds that can grow either scarcity or abundance. My story isn't finished yet, but I see now that the biggest shift comes when I stop expecting disaster and start expecting possibility. When I begin to see that the fuel driving my fears is what keeps my wealth at arm's length, not something inherently impossible to attract. And I wonder, what if I could teach myself to focus not on what I'm afraid of losing, but on what I want to create? That's the real question I'm asking myself today, and perhaps it's one you should ask too. Once I became aware of how deeply rooted these fears were, I saw that they weren't just fleeting thoughts, but powerful currents guiding my daily choices. I realized that even subtle doubts could act like invisible hands steering my energy away from abundance. For instance, every time I doubted my capacity to attract wealth, I unintentionally broadcasted a signal that I was unworthy or uncertain. That negative vibration then attracted experiences that reinforced my doubts, creating a vicious cycle I only kept feeding with every anxious thought. Building on this, I started to examine the emotional charge behind my worries. Fear not only acts as a mental obstacle, but also as an energetic block that prevents blessings from flowing freely. Imagine your thoughts as a stream. If you keep tossing rocks of doubt and scarcity into it, the water becomes turbulent, preventing clear flow. Conversely, when I shifted my focus toward feeling secure, confident, and genuinely grateful, I could sense the stream calming. As I did this more intentionally, I saw that my feelings serve as a powerful gauge. They're like an internal compass telling me whether I'm aligned with prosperity or stray into scarcity. Now consider how this insight plays out when you face tough situations. When bills pile up unexpectedly or investments don't go as planned, your mind may spiral toward panic. But here's the game changer. It's not about suppressing those emotions, but recognizing them as signals, not directives. If I can acknowledge anxiety without letting it dominate my energy, I create space for more empowering thoughts. For example, instead of allowing fear to spiral into a sense of overwhelm, I pause and actively choose to focus on what I do want to experience: financial security, smooth transactions, opportunities opening up. That switch in focus refocuses the entire energetic landscape, transforming a potential block into a stepping stone. Another aspect I began to notice is how scarcity mindset can subtly shape my everyday actions, often guiding me to make choices rooted in fear instead of possibility. It might manifest as reluctance to invest in oneself, avoid risks, or settle for less than I truly deserve out of a belief that abundance is scarce or reserved for others. Recognizing these behaviors was powerful because it revealed where unconscious programming was at play. By catching myself in the act of limiting decisions, I could consciously reframe and replace them with behaviors driven by confidence rather than doubt. To do this, I developed a practical approach. Whenever I caught myself slipping into worry or hesitation, I immediately paused and reoriented my focus toward an empowering affirmation. For example, I would tell myself, "Money flows to me effortlessly," or "I am worthy of prosperity." These phrases serve as mental anchors that counteract doubts. Over time, they rewired my subconscious and shifted my habitual thought patterns. The more consistently I practiced, the more natural it became to see opportunities instead of obstacles, abundance instead of want. What's crucial is realizing that these mental shifts also influence how I interact with my environment. When I start to notice possibilities instead of problems, I project a new energy that attracts favorable circumstances. Think about it. The moment confidence becomes part of your daily mindset, your words and actions align with abundance. Opportunities appear as if by divine timing because your energy is no longer resisting them. Instead, it's actively inviting them in. That's how the universe responds, through the vibrations we emit, intentionally or unintentionally. And here's the revelation I had. Abundance is not a finite resource reserved for some special few. It is a field that expands as I expand my perception of what's possible. When I stop viewing wealth as a limited commodity and instead see it as an infinite source available for everyone, I become a magnet for more. This shift in perspective was transformative. It lifted the mental chains that once made me feel small or undeserving. As I embraced a mindset of limitless potential, I started noticing how different my everyday experiences became. Unexpected opportunities showed up, doors swung open, and I felt more naturally guided toward growth rather than avoidance. The more I practiced adopting these new beliefs, drifting away from fear-based thoughts, the easier it became to trust in the natural flow of prosperity. Because, ultimately, abundance isn't just about possessing material riches. It's about feeling secure, valued, and aligned with the endless abundance the universe offers. Recognizing this deeply changed how I saw setbacks. Instead of viewing them as proof of lacking, I now see them as temporary signals guiding me toward better opportunities. It's about shifting from resistance to receptivity, from a mindset of scarcity to one of overflow. So, I invite you to assess where your own underlying fears might be quietly steering your decisions. Notice your daily habits and thoughts around money and success. They are reflections of your inner beliefs. Once you become conscious of these patterns, you gain the power to begin transforming them. This process isn't overnight, but each mindful step forward rewires your mental landscape. You start to see that every moment holds the potential for a new belief, a new way of experiencing your worth and capacity. This is the real magic. When you realize that with each shift in your thinking, you shape a new reality that aligns more closely with your true potential. I began to see that true prosperity isn't something I pursue or chase after desperately. It's something I cultivate from within. The more I focus on nurturing a mindset that believes abundance is my natural state, the more my external world begins to align with that truth. It's as if cultivating a garden. If I plant seeds of confidence, gratitude, and high vibration, I gradually see the blossoms of financial flow and opportunities flourishing in unexpected ways. This approach requires a shift in intentions, transforming the internal conversation from scarcity-focused to one rooted in appreciation and trust. Furthermore, I realize that subconscious beliefs act as filters through which I interpret every experience. If I unconsciously hold the notion that wealth is scarce or hard to come by, it's almost impossible to notice the opportunities that are constantly present around me. These beliefs are like blinders on a horse, blinding me from seeing potential avenues for growth and success. What's more, I learned that the process of scarcity is often reinforced by routines and habits deeply embedded in my subconscious, like old tapes looping in the background of my mind. Recognizing these ingrained patterns became the first step toward consciously rewriting my mental script. Building on this awareness, I took deliberate actions to uproot those limiting narratives. For example, I began to audit my daily thoughts, paying close attention to subtle phrases that suggested lack. I can't afford that, or there's not enough to go around. When I noticed such language, I would consciously pause, interrupt the cycle, and replace it with statements that emphasized my worthiness and the abundance available to me. An effective strategy was to simulate a dialogue with myself, asking, what if I believed that everything I needed was already present in my life? What if I trusted that, even in moments of uncertainty, the flow of abundance remained uninterrupted? This inner shift also required recalibrating my emotional responses to setbacks. When I encountered an unexpected expense or a downturn, I didn't automatically react with despair. Instead, I learned to view these experiences as signals, opportunities for growth rather than proof of deficiency. For example, I started to see problems as prompts to adjust my perspective or refine my plans instead of signs that I was permanently stuck. Over time, this change in attitude helped me develop resilience, allowing me to navigate fluctuations without losing sight of my larger vision. It's like learning to surf a wave. If I resist the movement, I get wiped out. But if I flow with it, I can ride it and come out stronger on the other side. Another powerful realization was that emotions serve as barometers. They give me real-time feedback about my vibrational state. When I feel gratitude flooding through me, I know I am perfectly aligned with abundance. Conversely, feelings of frustration or fear act as gentle nudges, reminding me to redirect my attention. I discovered that intentionally cultivating gratitude, focusing on what's already good, acts as a magnet, pulling more of that into my reality. It became clear that by deliberately shifting my emotional state from resistance to receptivity, I was actively participating in the creation of my future rather than passively hoping for the best. This was a game changer, because the energy I consistently emit attracts similar energies. Now, consider how this applies when faced with circumstances that previously seemed to drain my hope. Instead of dwelling on what's missing or imagining worst-case scenarios, I could choose an empowering question. What different outcome could I create by shifting my focus? When I became aware of a negative thought pattern, I would pause, breathe, and then reframe. What if the abundance I seek is already on its way? Or how is today a good day for unexpected blessings? These small but deliberate mental adjustments rewired my perception, enabling me to see possibilities where once I saw obstacles. It reinforced my understanding that prosperity isn't just about external possessions, but a state of being, a vibrational harmony I can tune into at any moment. With this more expansive awareness, I realized that maintaining a mindset of abundance requires persistent effort. It's an ongoing practice, like tuning an instrument so that it remains in perfect pitch. The more I aligned my thoughts and feelings with abundance, the easier it became to notice signs of flow everywhere. Synchronicities increased, doors opened unexpectedly, and I felt an inner confidence grow. I saw wealth not as a distant goal, but as an active current flowing through my life, accessible if I simply choose to step into it consciously. This understanding ignited a shift from seeking external validation to cultivating inner certainty, an inner conviction that I am worthy of prosperity, with all the resources and opportunities one needs just waiting to be claimed. When I shifted my internal dialogue from viewing scarcity as inevitable, I uncovered a surprisingly overlooked aspect. My subconscious programming often acts like a camera lens focusing exclusively on limitations instead of opportunities. Every time I catch myself replaying stories of financial struggle, it's as if I'm giving a spotlight to the problems, ignoring the countless solutions and resources available. My mind becomes a filter, selectively amplifying scenes of lack, the unpaid bills, the missed chances, while muting the countless instances where life has provided, where help has arrived unexpectedly, or where I discovered a new pathway. Recognizing this pattern is crucial because it signals that internal focus shapes external outcomes much more powerfully than I had previously acknowledged. Building on this, a new layer of awareness involves understanding the subtle but significant influence of energy conservation versus expansion. When I cling to thoughts of what's not enough, I unintentionally contract my energy, making myself less receptive to new influxes. It's like trying to pour more water into a glass that's already full. Resistance creates overflow and spillage. Conversely, actively releasing tension around finances, even mentally, creates space for fresh streams to flow in. An analogy that helped me was imagining my mental state as a garden. If I keep obsessing over weeds, I may neglect tending the soil for planting. By surrendering control over outcomes and shifting my attention to nurturing positive emotions, I begin cultivating fertile ground for growth. This transition from fixation to acceptance opens the door for abundance to naturally seed itself. Another essential insight is learning to assign new meaning to setbacks, those moments that once triggered feelings of failure or despair. Before, I used to interpret any financial challenge as proof I lacked the ability to succeed or that I was somehow cursed to be perpetually behind. Now, I see obstacles as catalysts for creative problem solving. They compel me to develop innovative strategies I wouldn't have considered if everything had gone perfectly. Think of hurdles as the fire that forges steel. If I embrace adversity instead of avoiding it, I strengthen my resilience and sharpen my awareness of opportunities one might have overlooked. When I shift my perspective this way, I stop seeing problems as proof of my inadequacy and start viewing them as integral steps in my journey toward greater prosperity. If I tap into this mindset deeply, I also notice how my vibrational frequency influences the kind of resources I attract. Vibrations are like musical notes. When I emit a tone of gratitude, confidence, and clarity, I attract harmonies that resonate with more abundance. Conversely, when I operate from a place of despair or self-doubt, I generate discordant sounds that repel positive influx. To fine-tune my frequency, I've learned to anchor myself in moments of appreciation. This doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes, simply acknowledging the small blessings, like a kind word from a stranger or a moment of peace, elevates my entire emotional state. This shift amplifies my energetic profile, making it more magnetic. I've come to understand that emotional elevation acts as the bridge connecting my current experience with the reality I desire. Consider how the quality of my questions impacts my capacity to draw solutions. If I focus on what's missing or how impossible my goals seem, I reinforce feelings of deprivation. But when I pivot to inquisitive, expansive questions like, what opportunities are presenting themselves right now? Or how can I create new streams of income today? I activate my creative faculties and open channels for inspiration. These questions act as divine keys, unlocking fresh pathways that might have remained hidden. Engaging in this style of inquiry shifts the mental terrain from scarcity to possibility. It's less about efforting and more about inviting intuition and insight into my consciousness. Finally, cultivating a sense of trust becomes critical when circumstances appear to stall. It's natural to second-guess, especially when immediate results are absent. Yet, I've learned that relinquishing grip on the need for instant confirmation allows space for the universe to perform its magic. Imagine planting a seed and worrying over it every hour. Growth is compromised by that impatience. Instead, I focus on nurturing the belief that everything unfolds at the perfect divine timing. This attitude eases the tension, creating a calm, vibrational environment that encourages serendipity. Trust becomes my steady anchor, knowing that when I align sincerely with my desired state, things will flow into place more effortlessly than I would have believed possible. It's a commitment to faith, transforming my perspective from one of doubt to one of unwavering confidence, which ultimately opens a broader portal for prosperity to pour in. Reflecting on this journey so far, I see an intricate tapestry weaving together subtle shifts in perception, emotional alignment, and an unwavering willingness to trust the process. It's as if I've been navigating a vast, expansive landscape where each insight acts as a stepping stone, promising, yet demanding my active participation to fully realize. The depth of this understanding begins to embroil me in a recognition that our internal landscape is like a mirror, holding up reflections that draw precisely what we emit outward. When fears dominate, they cast shadows that obscure the light of abundance. When gratitude fills my heart, it illuminates pathways that might otherwise stay hidden in darkness. What stands out most vividly is this dance of energy, how internal states ripple outward, crafting the contours of my reality in exquisite detail. This isn't a simple cause and effect scenario, but a delicate symphony where my thoughts, feelings, and beliefs compose the melodies that attract corresponding circumstances. Being mindful of this underscores the importance of cultivating a harmonious inner chorus, one rooted in confidence and appreciation, so that the external echoes can resonate with abundance, clarity, and ease. It's a gentle yet persistent reminder that the tune I tune my mind to will become the soundtrack of my experiences. When I consider these ideas together, a compelling picture emerges. The act of shifting inward isn't a single act, but a continuous process, akin to tending an endless garden. The soil must be prepared, weeds must be pulled, seeds planted intentionally, and patience cultivated. Each decision to release doubt, each moment of genuine gratitude, tills the ground for growth. There's an undeniable truth that this ongoing effort influences the vibrational fabric I'm weaving, shaping the environment in which my desires can flourish. This expanding awareness fuels a deeper commitment, embedding trust not just as a fleeting thought, but as an energetic stance that sustains me even amidst apparent setbacks. The collective insight refined through this exploration is that aligning with abundance is an art, an ongoing dance that invites both patience and courage. It calls for having the commitment to look beyond immediate appearances, to see potential where others might see obstacles, and to refuse to let temporary conditions distort self-perception. I see how anchoring myself in elevated emotions acts as a catalyst, fueling this dance, energizing my intentions, and transforming mere wishes into vibrant possibilities. This process becomes a dynamic interplay of internal states and external signals, which either restrict or amplify the flow of prosperity. Engaging with these truths humbles and empowers me simultaneously. It becomes clear that flow isn't a distant phenomenon, but an innate current accessible when I choose to operate from a space of trust rather than fear. The challenge lies in holding this perspective long enough to let it anchor deeply within, to make it a guiding principle rather than a fleeting hope. Each subtle alignment, each conscious choice to focus on abundance instead of scarcity, molds the clay of my reality into something more expansive, something that feels more aligned with my highest self. In this shared understanding, I sense a profound opportunity awaiting, a chance to actively craft a new inner environment that naturally attracts prosperity. It's a realignment that doesn't demand perfection but requires sincere intention and consistent care. Just like a vessel that's been carefully patched and reinforced, Our inner worlds can be made resilient against doubts and fears, allowing us to experience the fullness of our desires as an inevitable outcome. Holding this vision firm, I can see how the fabric of my life begins to subtly shift, woven together with threads of confidence, readiness, and faith, a tapestry that becomes more beautiful and abundant with each passing moment. And in that truth, I find the anticipation that propels me forward, eager to step fully into the rich, limitless flow waiting to be claimed. Looking back, I see how shifting my perception became a powerful act of reclaiming my life story. What once felt like a relentless battle against unseen forces now appeared as an internal dance, one I could learn to lead. I started understanding that true change begins from within, that every belief I hold is like a brushstroke painting my reality. When I chose to focus on possibilities instead of limitations, I simply shifted the tune I was playing. Suddenly, the landscape around me began to shift subtly but unmistakably. This journey was never about conquering some external obstacle, but about transforming my inner landscape, nurturing a mindset where growth resides naturally. When I stopped believing that circumstances are fixed and unchangeable, I opened space for fresh perspectives and new opportunities to emerge. The act of shifting my focus becomes a sacred practice, like tending a sacred flame, fueling trust and allowing me to see beyond temporary setbacks as opportunities for greater insight. It's a reminder that the power I seek outwardly is, at its core, cultivated inwardly, in how I choose to interpret each moment and respond to it. What I've come to understand is that the energy I bring to each experience shapes its outcome far more profoundly than external forces ever could. When I learn to approach life with acceptant curiosity and gentle confidence, I unveil a new way of being, a state where abundance flows effortlessly, not as a distant goal, but as a natural extension of my inner harmony. Stepping into this renewed perspective feels like awakening from a long, restless sleep. The world appears richer, more vibrant, filled with signs pointing to endless possibility. It's in those moments of deep presence, the acknowledgement that I am capable of creating my unique, thriving reality, that I fully step into the truth of my own power. As I continue this path, I see more clearly that the stories of struggle I once clung to no longer serve me. They served as lessons, yes, but holding on to them as gospel kept me tethered to a limited version of myself. Now, I understand that rewriting the narrative begins with the stories I tell myself about worthiness and possibility. I can choose to see obstacles as temporary stations rather than permanent barriers. I can view setbacks not as signs of failure, but as necessary steps in my evolution, each one nudging me gently toward a deeper understanding of what I am truly capable of manifesting. The beauty of this realization lies not only in the external shifts it sparks, but in the way it awakens a sense of freedom within. When I start trusting the flow of life, I notice how resilience becomes second nature. Even amidst uncertainty, I stand firmer, grounded in a conviction that more than enough resources, support, and opportunities are there, simply waiting for me to notice and accept them. My perception becomes a fertile ground where visions thrive and possibilities blossom into realities. Every moment becomes an invitation, not a cause for worry or doubt, but an opening doorway to deeper expansion. In truth, the greatest lesson I've found is that the act of surrender, of releasing tight grips and overthinking, allows me to step into a space where growth is effortless. It's as if I've handed over the reins to a greater intelligence that knows far better than I do how to bring what I need into my life. Trust becomes the compass that guides my actions. Faith becomes the foundation that sustains my journey. When I live rooted in this understanding, I discover that the most profound manifestations happen not because I chase after them, but because I quietly expect them, holding space for opportunities to arrive in ways I could never have imagined. So, I invite you to see yourself not as someone struggling against the odds, but as someone capable of rewriting the story you tell about what is possible. The key lies in your posture of belief and the openness to see miracles unfold in the smallest of details. When you let go of the need to control every outcome and instead embrace the flow of life, you become a vessel for miracles. This is a continuous process, an artful dance of inner shift and outer manifestation. The more you trust in the unseen forces working for your highest good, the more your reality begins to reflect that harmony in ways that surpass your wildest dreams. It's not about forcing your way through obstacles, but gently inviting new possibilities into your space, knowing that everything you need is already within reach, ready for you to receive.